Hi, it's Carly here from Tribe. So at Tribe, we're massive advocates for authenticity, vulnerability, revealing the truth of who we are. And what this kind of practically comes down to is sharing our thoughts and feelings. So, it's like our experience, our thoughts and feelings kind of constitute our experience as well as our embodied experience, our sensations. And being authentic, kind of at a most basic level, is revealing those things. I'm like being authentic in revealing the truth of my experience. And I just encourage everybody to lean into taking risks doing that. As I started on my own journey doing this, this I think is a really common thing as people lean more into valuing authenticity and practicing it, is when people potentially get hurt when we share those things. If I have a judgment and I share that, someone might get hurt when I share that. If I have a particular feeling, and maybe that feeling, is inappropriate to what's going on. Maybe I'm angry or whatever it might be. Then that could actually impact somebody in a negative way, and it can potentially be damaging to relationships. And so I think very quickly, and this was true for me, we kind of get into this inquiry of how do I actually share my authenticity appropriately? Now, I like to think of this as like a polarity between authenticity and appropriateness. Polarities are kind of these interdependent pairs, right? And I think so much of life is composed of polarities. And to me, maturation is about learning how to integrate these interdependent pairs. So how do I integrate my authentic expression with a sense of discernment around that expression, so that my expression is appropriate to the context, it's appropriate to the person that I'm engaged with. So to me, actually more mature version of authenticity is not just about being authentic in my own expression, it's also about being authentic to the context, authentic to the person, right? So there's a kind of resonance associated with what's occurring in this moment. And if I'm attuned to that, I'm going to be authentic to that resonance. And so learning how to actually have my attention on myself and what's my sense of truth, what are my thoughts and my feelings, my experience, and have my attention on this context, on the person that I'm engaged with, such that I'm kind of in tune with how to express my authenticity. One prime example for me is how I share with my kids. It's not appropriate for me to share all of my thoughts and feelings with my kids. It would just overwhelm them. And they wouldn't understand how I think about things. So I need to actually translate my thoughts and translate my feelings so that it meets them and it honors them. And such that they can actually understand, in their frame of reference, what's actually going on for me. And it also doesn't kind of freak them out somehow, my kids rely on me, they rest on me, I'm a place of safety in their lives, and revealing kind of too much of my vulnerability could actually scare my kids, right? Because they then, might start thinking, if daddy's like this, then how am I going to cope? So also kind of calibrating to kind of the roles that I'm playing, and being clear on what's appropriate to those roles. So the other polarity that I think about quite a bit here, a very kind of associated polarity, is the polarity between revealing and privacy, right? So how much do I choose to reveal versus how much do I choose to keep private? So like I said right at the beginning, we're big advocates for revealing. I think revealing our sense of truth can be such a place of creating connection with the people that we love. We reveal our vulnerability. Generally, people are going to feel closer to us, because vulnerability touches people, right? When I share, my fears and my imperfections and where I have shame, normally people will soften around those more vulnerable, softer style emotions. And in particular, I think revealing around shame is a really healing kind of act, and the work of Brene Brown I think is awesome here. So saying, I don't think it's always appropriate to reveal, right? It is important to have discernment around what we're revealing. And it's important for us to actually have a sense of privacy. I have my own inner world of my thoughts and feelings, and some level of that world, it's mine. It's a sacred place for me to reside in. There's almost like a sacred aloneness for me to rest in. And there's certain kind of places that if I revealed them, I'd be almost like diminishing myself. And kind of like knowing what that is, I don't think is necessarily clear. I think it's like an ongoing inquiry, an ongoing sense of discernment of like what seems right to keep private and what seems right to share. Now, one important distinction I think here is that kind of not sharing everything is different to like hiding something that maybe I'm scared to share, and this is where I in particular encourage like really looking carefully at the things that we feel scared to share, because these can be places that, dishonesty by omission is like a thing, right? So like, why do we not want to share something? So I think that's an important piece, right? And then I think there's this piece around appropriateness of sharing, right? So there's like, what's private to me in the context of who I'm with? Do I have discernment associated with, like, how much trust is there with this person? Can I trust that they're going to honor my vulnerability, and honor that I could get hurt from that place, and then they're not going to do something that kind of hurts me with that information. And we've talked about kind of this in other Facebook Lives. I think one in particular, when is vulnerability inappropriate? And I think Damien also did one on vulnerability violations. What else? So part of it is someone going to actually honor my vulnerability? Part of it is, are they actually going to be able to receive it in a way that they don't potentially take it too personally? And there's like a practice of like being able to share my thoughts and my feelings in a way where I'm taking responsibility for them. I might have a judgment, but that judgment is mine. It's actually about me. It's about my frame of reference. I think needing to be kind of careful with our language to like really, say that, and kind of really own it. This is about me, and this is the experiences that have me have that judgment becomes really, really important. But even doing that, some people are going to take something like that quite personally. And I have certainly and still go into situations like that. It's like places where my boundaries can be poor, and I start like just easily making meaning about me rather than about what the person is actually saying is something that they're saying about themselves. And for me, I will like just basically start getting defensive in this place, and it's something I struggled with for a long time. Just like that I can easily get defensive, and it's like it frustrated me. And it's only as I've been like working much more solidly on my boundaries that I'm actually starting to be able to much more easily just hear the things that somebody else is saying about them. So if I'm in this discernment of what should I reveal versus what should I keep private, having a sense of how good somebody else's boundaries are is going to also like help me calibrate to what is appropriate for me to share. So if I'm sharing judgments, even if I'm doing it in a kind of very responsible way and I'm sharing it that it makes it about me, do I have a sense of trust that this person is actually going to be able to hear that I'm sharing something about myself, even if it's somehow a way in which this person has impacted me, and I'm like wanting them to hear and kind of acknowledge the impact that they've had on me. And then that in particular, I think, is a place that, if I'm sharing a judgment that's actually about the person, even though the judgment is about me, that can get into pretty tricky scenarios. So kind of having a sense of how well this person's going to do this is important. I think being able to set context also helps a lot there, like to go slow and see if the person's in a place that they can hear these kind of things. anyway, there's like a whole track that I could go on down there, but just kind of coming back to this theme of like, how do I know what, should I share my thoughts or feelings or not? Kind of my final few thoughts on this is, that we don't always know. It's like, sometimes we've just got to take a risk and see what happens, and to me, this is part of, kind of stepping into the world with authenticity. There's like a way that we're starting to actually take risks in doing so. We're starting to reveal ourselves, and to me, those risks, in my experience, pay off more often than not. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they like fail miserably. Like I've certainly damaged relationships by taking some risks and gotten quite hurt myself as well. What is certainly true for me in the process of doing that is that I've learnt a lot and I've grown a lot. I think kind of being able to reflect on what happened in these things is really important. If we don't kind of take the time to like try and make sense of it, then we won't necessarily kind of get the learning. But this kind of process of calibrating ourselves, so I've got calibration such that my authenticity is appropriate to the context. I've got calibration around, what should I reveal versus what should I keep private. A lot of that calibration to me comes through the process of trial and error. It's the process of actually taking risks and trying things out and reflecting on what actually happened and kind of being willing to kind of do clean up in relationships. And that to me is then how we get kind of more differentiated in our management of these polarities and of these interdependent pairs of different things. I think the final thing that's present for me is just like how, like one thing I think about is it's like a really common experience to me of like when I get into like a triggered conversation with somebody, it gets like really heated and kind of, then we get in there. It's kind of like in those moments are the moments that, we tend to say the thing that the judgment that we've had that we've kind of haven't been willing to say. But in that moment, we just like use it, we chuck it out, and it can be like oh yeah, well, I think this about you, like, and sometimes that can be a positive thing. Like more often than not, I don't think it is, because it kind of doesn't have good calibration and containment. But sometimes it kind of takes a context like that for us to just say the thing, like rather than kind of holding ourselves back and not being willing to actually share any of our truth in a sense. But in those contexts, I certainly encourage caution and kind of slowing down and picking the right situation, the right timing, such that kind of people in a conversation can be resourced to be able to share themselves. But like to me, like a sign of getting to a place of having like really good maturity around all of this is even in a context like that, if somebody says that to me and I can hear that it's actually about them, I can kind of keep my sense of calm, and even if it kind of impacts me and I have like a different version of reality to this person, I don't necessarily even have to share that. I can just be like, thank you for telling me about you, right? And to me, this is then where there's like a strong sense of maturity about, having a sense of privacy. This is my reality. This is my truth. And it's okay for people to have a different sense of truth to me. It's okay for them to have a different experience. Of course, if we need to be in a relationship and coordinate, together, then there's, revealing is going to be helpful. But there's a certain place too where it's like okay to just let that be. It's like, okay, well, we're different, and so even if you have a judgment of me and it doesn't fit for me, I can hear that and let you have that, and understand and what might be true, and have inquiry around the experience you've had of me, from that. And so as I'm like getting better and better at kind of having better boundaries, and then not kind of basically taking things personally that people say and getting defensive about it, then there's like almost like more sense of sovereignty and more like almost scope for my own sense of privacy of like, this is my reality. You can have your own reality. I don't need to defend. That's okay. We can be different. I can still have curiosity, and when it's important to me, where we might need to be kind of coordinating together, making agreements, managing things together, work, parenting, whatever it might be, then I might start to share more details of my reality. So to me, there's like the kind of a healthy side of revealing, and there's a healthy side of privacy, and that's kind of what I'm speaking to in this last part. It's like more the healthy side of privacy. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot of different kind of things to play with, a lot of different thoughts. I hope this was useful. I hope it all kind of hung together. I realized I kind of went off on different tangents and maybe got a little bit rambly here and there. But it's really important understanding for me, and I hope some of you watching it provides some good food for thought. Thank you for watching. Good night.